that a thumbs up? Okay. Calling this meeting to order. The June 5th, 2019 Site and Architectural Commission. Jeannie, would you like to do roll call?
Commissioner Lesniak. Commissioner Harrington.
Here.
Commissioner Kroc.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Chairperson Wade.
Present.
Just to note that Commissioner Lesniak is absent. 4 commissioners are present.
Very good. If everybody could turn off or silence their cell phones, that would be great.
I do that. I think I did, but
I think, Jeannie, why don't you start us off with the orders of the day?
Yeah, so there are 3 handouts that I put in front of you. Mm-hmm. The 2 of them have the item numbers on them, the project numbers, and then the text is for item number 4. So when we get to those, I'll highlight those handouts.
Okay.
Oh, and you all should have received the amended agenda in the email, via email.
I did.
Yes. Thank you.
And I added.
I can't tell the difference between the 2.
Well, if you, one had red at the top if it was printed. I don't think it got.
Did you print
to
yours?
use?
No.
So it has
My old
amended at top? No?
No.
Okay, I must have gotten it. I just
It should have item number 5 on it.
Oh, one has the meeting procedure format change thing? No, there's this one here, this meeting format of the meetings.
Oh,
I think that's the only difference.
I didn't print the back of these. So you guys can look at this one. Oh, shit, no, sorry.
As long as you have it, I think.
Oh, that's the back.
Okay.
We printed theirs out. It's double-sided.
I did not print mine out.
The new one is double-sided.
Mhm.
Okay, I got it then.
So
Okay.
this one is.
Well, this one is double-sided too, but
None of us have the amended
none of us
agenda.
have the amended agenda.
I'm
Steve will
confident
steer
about
us
that.
in the right direction.
Thank you,
We
Jeannie.
trust you.
I will share the amended agenda.
Okay. I think Steve
Oh, yeah, okay. This
Steve,
is-
you better have this.
Got it.
Steve
I do
better have
it. I have it.
take a look at it.
All right. Boy, glad we got that.
And it did get posted last Friday in the appropriate places, just to note, and is on the web also.
Okay. All right, so let's open it up for public comment. Basically, this is a period for people to come up and speak about items that are not on the agenda. If you have anything you'd like to speak about, please come up to the podium, state your name, and say what you'd like to say. Anybody? Any takers on that? No takers. Okay. We will close that and move on to approval of the last meeting minutes for May 1st.
I just have a question. Were we really here until 8:50? Were we here for 2 hours?
I don't think so.
I don't think we were
Maybe
here for
that's
2 hours. I mean,
maybe
it's
that's a typo.
It's a pretty random, pointless thing, but I just wondered if my memory was failing.
No, I don't think we were here.
Both of those are true.
We were here for 2 hours. Probably. Okay, well,
Okay, with
Matter.
the exception of that.
yes.
I would move to accept the minutes.
Okay.
I would second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. 4-0. Those minutes are approved. Okay, let's move into the public hearing agenda items. The first one is 17-921 Saratoga Los Gatos Road. Want to give us a brief rundown on that one?
Yeah, as you recall, we had the public hearing for this proposal at your last meeting and did hear any public comment. Because the story poles had not gotten up in time, the commissioner continued the hearing until tonight's meeting. The poles did get up and certified. I have not received any additional comments via email or phone or counter inquiries. So, and I don't have any additional comments. The project is still the same as was heard at the last meeting.
Does anybody, any representative for the project want to come up and speak on it beyond what was already said last time? That is a no. We discussed it, and I think we were just, there was just that last little loop that had to get closed with the story poles. I took a quick look at it. Nothing shocking. It's pretty
Tough to
much
see
as
the
I-
story poles.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. See anything that differed from what I thought it was going to look like. So,
No, I think
comments,
it's kind of-
thoughts?
No, I moved to
Slammed in.
approve it.
Okay. Vote on that? Ayes?
Aye.
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 Aye. So
Sorry, you had to come back.
we'll pass that one 4-0 then.
All right, good luck with your project, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, moving on to the second item, 15171 Carl Avenue. Jeannie, could you please give us the rundown on that one?
Yeah, the application that's before you is for 1,000 square foot, 1,000 square foot accessory structure for additional garage space as well as storage and workshop. The house improvements had been approved previously last year through a site development permit, so the proposed accessory structure is consistent with the design of the home that was approved and will be finished with the same materials as was required with the home site. I have what I did pass out to you was one email comment related to a small window on, I believe it's the south side of the structure, and just a neighbor concern. This is a single-story structure, so whether that's of issue, and again, whether windows are in there or not doesn't presume it's going to be used for anything other than what they're proposing to use it for. So with that, I'm available for questions.
So the window that we're talking about
It's
is
in the storage room, that
that
little
small,
small
like
window, yeah.
2.6.
Mhm.
Jeannie, I have a question for you. We were discussing earlier distinctions between accessory dwelling units and what's proposed here. And I'm curious whether the city mandates that there be a covenant recorded against the property or something that ensures that this storage facility isn't turned into a living space at some juncture, because it looks like a living space on the plans to me.
Yes.
No, the city has its zoning regulations, which will always basically govern how a property owner utilizes the site and any structures on it. Currently, as proposed, they have an attached accessory dwelling unit with the new home, so therefore they are not allowed a secondary dwelling. If that happens, the city can enforce their own regulations. We don't need a covenant. We don't need a deed restriction. Should some modifications be made to the main home, and if there is any square footage capacity, I'm pretty confident that they've maxed out the primary dwelling square footage, or pretty close to it, so that they can't revert that attached accessory dwelling unit space to primary dwelling unit. So it just, that's it. I mean,
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't give the applicant a chance to speak.
That's okay. If you guys have questions of me,
Okay,
you
we're just-
can, and then
okay.
you can open the public hearing for.
Okay. So I don't have any questions. Anybody else? All right, so I'll open it up.
I'd like to hear.
Yeah, if the applicant would like to speak on this, you're welcome to come up.
Hello, everyone. Bahram Najasada. I am the owner of the property. And so we are building the main house. We needed extra room for a garage because we only have a 2-car garage attached. So we added this one, and we added extra room beyond it. It's going to be used as a storage, and you asked about the window. We are thinking, to be honest with you, I don't have an exact plan of how we're going to utilize this space. We probably end up putting some gym equipment there and use it as a home gym. That's why we put some windows in there that also, as city permits, we could use it as like a pool house, something like that. But mainly right now, it's just going to be a storage and kind of a workshop thing right behind the garage. But any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Great. So I see in the overall kind of plan, I don't see that window there. But in the enlarged plans, I do see the window. So
we did not have a window on it. And then I asked the architect to put a small window there because the room would be really dark and, closed off without any windows. Just we added that small window there so, and we get some light into the room. And I think, because of the fire hazard, we need to have some room, window. If somebody is there as a workshop, even whatever, having that extra window would help.
Have you changed architects?
And yes, we have.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of
With the
confused.
building permit submittal, we'd require all the plans to be consistent as far as what's going where. So that one sheet, like the elevations show the windows at the rear of that structure as well as that small one on the south side. One of the floor plans shows it. So to the extent that that's the direction they're going in, they would have to make all the other plans internally consistent.
Because I'm confused because it looks like there's a window off the back
There-
in the
yeah, that's
storage
what-
room.
There are
Yeah.
two.
So there are two windows.
To be honest with you, I don't have it on the
there's
back of
two
my
windows.
memory
There's a little
exactly
one
how
that
many
faces the
windows there are.
neighbor,
Yeah.
And
But-
then there's
And the one
a
in the
large
back.
one that
Okay.
matches the workshop window.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Have you reached out to the neighbors? Last time you were before us, we got over half a dozen concerns from neighbors about the project, as you recall.
Yes.
Did you reach out to the neighbors about this particular project? I know that was asked of you last time.
So we have a story poles have been up, for the accessory structure. I don't know if anybody reached out to you guys or no, but we mentioned that actually the next door neighbor was just about last time was concerned about the privacy. He was insisting on having tall plants alongside. I think this would help with what they were looking for. Having that building there, it eliminates any privacy concerns that they had. I think it will help the. Other than that, any other, it's barely visible from the street. It's so far back that it's just it's not blocking anybody's view or anything. It's just and right now, since we had the story poles up, you guys can drive by. It's really you can only see the top of the building.
And so the request from the neighbor is to move the window. So I don't,
Remove the window.
it says remove or
Well-
move?
If it's on that face, it's all gonna face their home, so
So remove the window.
I think it's remove. Well, move it to the other wall, but there's already a window there, right? I
Already a
mean,
window there, yeah.
Would you be willing to consider your neighbor's request to remove that
If
window?
I have to, I remove the window, but I can't see why. There is I believe, PG&E has some sort of a easement on the neighbor's property there. There is a lot of distance between our structure and our neighbor's structure, and also their structure is much more basically closer to the street, so you cannot see anything from that window. And the neighbor has actually a old shed, I believe, which the window would be opening to, and we also have lots of plantation right behind it. So I can't see the reason for the concern, but if that's something that you guys require, we could remove the window. It's not that huge of an issue.
And there's already a 6.0 window in there, same as in the workshop, right?
If you look at the design of the house throughout, we tried to put as many windows as possible just to make it lighter and brighter and taking advantage of the natural light instead of. But I believe, given that we are meeting all the setback requirements, it's within our rights to have a small window there. I can't see why the neighbors would be concerned about that.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
I honestly, it's far enough back in the house, back in the property. I don't really see that little window in a storage unit would be a problem, but
I mean,
because I don't know if you move it, you'd still be moving it to somewhere on that wall, which would, it's either remove it or let it happen.
And again, don't forget that, well, I don't know. It's single story, and the ability to regulate privacy is a real kind of shaky area. I think with the main project, we did get screening landscaping as
True.
part of that.
Right.
So,
Just back to the main project, you said that we already approved an
Yeah.
ADU. How come it's not?
attached.
It's attached,
They're,
okay.
they're calling it a guest unit
Yeah.
on the floor
On
plan.
the other side,
So it's on the north side on the ground floor.
Where's the kitchen?
in the middle.
Doesn't have a real kitchen. It has just like
Smaller kitchen.
maybe a few cabinets or kitchenettes. It's not barely a kitchen.
Yeah. It's
Doesn't
not-
ADU have to have a kitchen?
Oh, let's not go into that.
I just pulled it up. Yeah.
Basically, we just found out that all we can require is the connections.
Okay, all right,
So we're
So they can do a total grab for square footage.
all right.
they can't put a door in between the two.
Right.
So, and again, we know sometimes that may happen, but they're always liable for violation of the zoning regulations and their permits. So,
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready to vote on this. Anybody else?
I don't have any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else want to speak on it? Nope. All right. Would anybody like? I'll make the motion.
Well, did we want to discuss it?
Or unless we want to
I think-
discuss it
I
further?
think you have something to say.
You could
I
see
can tell.
steam coming out of my ears.
You have something, okay, yes.
I'm disappointed that this project wasn't originally submitted to us last year. I suspect that this will become ultimately living space. There's already a furnace depicted on the plans.
Well, and there's space for a shower in the bathroom,
Right.
and clearly the storage room's a bedroom.
The reason why I asked the questions of Jeannie in that respect. And so I'd like to avoid that from happening.
I agree.
And if conditional approval is subject to removal of the window on the neighbor's side to satisfy that particular neighbor, I think that makes it a less inviting bedroom.
Still got a big window, but
Yeah.
and that's, okay.
And so I guess my thought would be that may be the only way to discourage that type of use.
Or
If they
Does
called it,
that
if they called it a
bathroom
pool cabana?
get configured in a way that a shower can't be put in there? Because clearly there's enough room for a shower where the big, huge blank space is.
Yeah, the half the bathroom, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna just discuss a little bit. I don't have attorney support here, so I'm gonna do my own. But again, if this was a pool cabana, you can put a full bath in a pool cabana, have, a portion set aside for a gym and all of that stuff. So when you start getting into designing the interiors of the spaces, it's a little shaky ground. So
they
and
can
to
have
start
a pool
and
bathroom.
to start trying to assume or presume that certain things are going to happen might be a little.
But they could legally have a pool bathroom in there. Like this could be their
You
pool
can have a full
bath.
bathroom in
Okay.
in an
Then we
accessory
can-
structure. Pool cabanas often do have that,
Okay.
so that they use
Supposed to
that.
shower before you go in the pool, but nobody does it.
So
Okay.
they just can't put cooking facilities in those if they've already got an accessory dwelling unit. So again, and as long as overall they comply with the, there's no limit on the number of accessory structures you can have. That's all really governed by the
Square footage limits.
and the lot coverage, structural coverage. They do already have that accessory dwelling unit, and to the extent that they have any capacity left in the main dwelling square footage is the only way that they could convert any of that existing attached square footage to other. And then if they did have it, the ADU comes through a straight building permit. So again, just understanding what you really do and don't have the ability to regulate. No disrespect meant with my comments.
None taken. I'm not trying to redesign the I guess my motion, my motion would be to approve subject to removal of the window on the west side, I think that is.
You think that makes it that much less inviting and is actually?
I don't think it makes sense.
That's why if I were to make a motion, I just don't know. I want to discourage that use. But Jeannie's points are well taken in relationship to a pool house because you'd want a lit room for a pool house. So I'm not going to reject it on that basis.
I'm my opinion that window doesn't make any difference either way.
Yeah.
It's very small. It's tucked away in the corner, the back of the building. Gonna prevent anything happening in the future that we don't know.
Understood. No, I agree.
And if privacy, if that window, is more of a concern relative to privacy, the one thing the commission can do is to ensure that whatever screening landscaping was required per the original permit relative to the main house get extended down to this accessory structure.
Well, I think it was pretty extensive along that property line, if I remember
I
correctly.
think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the plans here.
Yeah.
But I don't know I don't know how far, if we set a limit on it.
English Laurels was the
Yeah.
commitment made, and it went all the way beyond the pool. So I think this
So it should be
accessory
covered.
That'll capture that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
I think that's
That probably satisfies our concerns.
I think it does,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, I move that we approve this project as submitted.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Good luck
Ayes
with
have
your project.
it.
Good luck.
Thanks. Alrighty. Moving on to item 3, 18528 Beck Avenue. Jeannie?
Okay, so I did pass out one handout for you all.
Yeah.
And I'll explain this a little bit more. The project you have before you is actually a permit amendment. You did approve some additions to this home a year ago, a little over a year ago. And I would characterize it as scaling back. They did originally have an extension on the garage coming out with a secondary dwelling unit at the second level of that garage. That's gone away. The garage is not being extended out as much. They're still doing the rear family room addition as well as the master bedroom addition. Since the plans were distributed to you all, there is a desire to make additional architectural changes. So what you're seeing here is what I'm calling original proposal is in the plans that you have here. And then, so they're really proposing to take a hip roof design and put a gable at the family room and the master room. You didn't see story pools up here because, again, this had already been represented, and this is really just an amendment to scale back. There are some modifications to the, kind of the finished design too. And I think the most recent architectural changes didn't warrant delay as far as story poles or anything like that because the height really isn't any higher than the hip roof. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay. So the reduction is actually relatively significant, isn't it?
As far as
I remember it was quite large out that
yeah, it was
wing
coming-
that
Yeah.
jutted out.
Out in front.
out in front.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, they've scaled back. They've taken that second story accessory dwelling unit away, and the remainder, there's some differences in the finish architecture. Not significant. They still had the gables, and but I think this is what ultimately they're really wanting to move forward with.
I don't have any more questions for you. No. Okay. Would the applicant like to come up and speak on this? Okay.
Thank you very much. I am the applicant. I feel like Jeannie represented it very well. We had this relatively grand plan last year, and I do remember you all talking about the size of the accessory dwelling, and frankly, we broadly agreed. We both wanted the space, but at the same time, it was a little bit ominous. All of our neighbors had approved that design as well. We had them all over. Mm-hmm. We've had them all over again. Everybody's very comfortable with the plan. So, yeah, this is the same plan, just scaled back a little bit, and this is very much the final thing, and we'd love to move forward and get it done.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was all.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have,
This is a no-brainer.
and I
Do you
think
have any
these other little tweaks only enhance it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Adding light to the room, it looks
yeah,
great.
no, I like it.
Yeah.
So, you ready to vote?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll move to accept as proposed.
I'll second it. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, 4-0. Good to go. All right. All right, so that, I think, closes the public hearing portion of our meeting. And we move on to the next commission discussion section. And I think I'm going to hand it to Jeannie to kind of lead
Tell
the
us
way
all
on this
about it.
piece here.
Okay, so as we've done in the past, since a couple of these proposed ordinance changes directly relate to the work that you do, it's why you're seeing us bring it before you to get your kind of review and thoughts on it. They're two very separate items. One is related to making some changes to our subdivision regulations where within those regulations, the provisions yield site and architectural control to the city council. It was the council's desire to, in those instances, have those projects referred to you all for your review and recommendation to them. And the reason we had to make specific changes is because there is no provision for that via the subdivision regulation. And we also have to make some changes in the site development permit regulations to give you guys the authority to do that. So what you will see in one of the handouts is, this isn't the final language per se, but I think it gives you a better idea of what we're doing. So you'll see Title 13 are the subdivision regulations. You guys predominantly deal with Title 10, the planning and zoning. So within the subdivision regulations, and this is coming out of the provisions strictly related to hillside and scenic corridor subdivisions, that it talks about city council shall exercise architectural and site control. And so, again, as we go through these ordinance changes, we're taking every opportunity to clarify language also, because there's sometimes tends to be a little vagueness in the wording. So you're seeing us wanting to put in architectural and site control and consider all site development permits required by that. And that's in the case of a subdivision, not all site development permits. So this, again, specific to subdivisions.
Don't interrupt, but so we have two potential projects that would be subject to that. One, the one we looked at over here in La Hacienda, right? They're both in the scenic corridor.
The Hacienda's done.
Done.
Yeah, and that was actually a planned development zoning.
So it still has different rules.
And in the zone, yeah, the whole planned development zoning within there, the provisions for that, again, gives review of and approval of planned development permits strictly to the city council. Okay, so don't want to confuse that now all site development permits along the scenic corridor are going to go to council. This is just specific to site and architectural control over subdivisions, hillsides and scenic corridor. So right now you have that. There's that one, which is why we voluntarily brought it in front of you. Even if this did go through, they technically wouldn't be subject to this because they're only subject to the rules and regulations in place at the time of application.
Yeah, but that application was denied, right? So
the application hasn't been heard in front of council.
Okay.
Oh. So is this commission a recommending body for subdivisions that are not on the scenic corridor?
No.
Oh. Then why are we specifically saying for subdivisions within the hillsides and scenic corridor / highway? Or why are we making that distinction? It almost seems as if
it's the site and architectural. It's all relative to site and architectural control. So in subsection D, it talks about architectural and site control. The city council exercises it. Council wants, when they exercise that control, in the case of subdivisions along the scenic corridor, they want those projects to be referred to Site and Architectural Commission for their review and recommendation to them before they hear it.
Oh, so what about subdivisions that are not on the scenic corridor?
But hillside is where you're getting.
You all have, again, and this is only subdivisions. If it's not in the hillside, if a subdivision is not in a hillside or along the scenic corridor, any site development permits for construction on those lots comes to you all.
But hillside and scenic corridor, it's not just scenic corridor, or hillside is scenic corridor. How's that defined?
Hillsides?
Yeah.
A subdivision, hillsides are, I think, defined as where the slope is greater than 10% or something, but we haven't seen any of those. Where's my code?
I mean, it's a hilly little town. So
Yeah.
where does it stop and start?
You don't have a whole lot of sites that are ripe for subdivision.
Dividable.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's always one.
So is the bottom line, which is what I think it is, but I'm not sure, is that it will codify that site and architecture looks at it and does a review and a recommendation.
Council, exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
that's
So what you
the
guys
narrow
did
So it's
with
basically what we just did.
Yeah.
But to put it in, so it's not,
Codifying
so
it.
it's not at city council discretion, this is what happens.
But again, ours is just a recommendation,
we
so
don't-
they
we-
can still
yeah,
do
yeah,
whatever
We
they
don't have
want.
the power to deny
Right.
at all.
Right.
We have three options to make a recommend.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
spelled it out.
Yeah, she spelled it out really well.
Okay.
So a hillside subdivision is one in which the average slope of the land to be divided exceeds 10%. Not the resulting lot's slope, but like if you had a
The average slope of
2.5
the,
Yeah.
acre lot and its average slope was 11%, that would be considered a hillside subdivision. And in that instance, site and architectural control is yielded to the council. This proposed ordinance change, the council is saying, we want a recommendation from the Site and Architectural Commission to us before we do it. Similar to how if there are two applications associated with a project, like a site development permit and a variance, and the variance is subject to council review and
Right.
action, all applications associated with that go before you. You sit as the recommending body.
Right.
is this just kind of cleaning up a gap that exists? Where
I wouldn't
things
call it.
would go
I wouldn't
straight to
call it a
council?
gap. I would say it's implementing the desire of the council to have you guys sit as a recommending body in instances where they've been designated an architectural.
So I had just a question of clarification in your write-up on the analysis page of this. So staff also proposes that city council can also remand the application back to staff for the application work to revise the proposed designs. So it doesn't really spell out, okay, let's say it ends up, they want some modifications, it goes back to you. Does that mean you have the control of approving it at that point? It seems like that language needs to be spelled out. So if you're looking on the one that says now, it's on the back of the first page, the third paragraph down.
Underline.
So our proposal is that it not get ping pong back and forth between council, site and architecture council, site and architecture, or whatever. It's just, okay, you reviewed it. So in the case of these, that's what we're proposing, is that if the council.
The
is
staff
still-
would have the final say-so
No.
if
to-
it gets bounced
to-
back. Staff also proposes that the city council can remand the application back to staff for the application work.
The intent is not that we're the final decision maker. It's,
Right.
okay, go back, revise it, work with staff, and then bring it back. But I think maybe the language
I
needs to be
think it
clarified.
needs to be clarified so that
Because the
we have
intent is,
onboard
we're
attorney
not
or-
the final decision.
Not writing today.
I mean, sometimes, sometimes you'll say, okay, well, we feel comfortable with the planner finalizing the landscaping or something like that. I don't think this is the same
But
intent.
I feel
think
like
it
we
should go back.
I feel like we need to put checks and balances, because maybe someday you're not the planner and we have some loose cannon in your position, that we need to have some sort of checks and balances.
And I think the intent of this last sentence means they can send it back to work with staff to then bring it back to them.
Yes.
So
Okay,
they're
so
final.
let's just clarify that in the
Add
language
that.
and then we're good.
Add that sentence.
Yeah, so we're not final. It's work with staff to then go back to council for the final decision.
Now, would it come back for review by us before?
I think our intent is, again, not to ping pong it back and forth.
Well, I think,
Because we might be running into, we could very well run into Permit Streamlining Act violations and
but I
stuff
also
like
think
that.
that, let's say, wouldn't the city council have control on, let's say it's just like, no, we're not doing it, and you got to start all over, whatever goes to you. It seems like if there were some big problems with it, it would need to start all over
Well,
and go through site and architecture. But that would be the,
they can approve with conditions, or they can deny.
yeah, so deny they would start over.
Deny without prejudice. Did I say that right? I'm looking at you.
Well said.
Which means sometimes in muni codes, there's a limitation on when you can bring the same application back or an application on that site back. If they deny without prejudice, means that you can come back as soon as you work things out. Usually when they do that, they'll give some direction saying, you really need to go in this direction, or, what comes back to me is that Constitution Avenue, council sent it back to you guys to be the final decision or after the appeal or whatever. So they really should stay in that decision-making capacity, and their decision should not be send it back to you to make the final decision on an appeal, that sort of thing. So I think we're trying to keep it.
I'm just trying to look at every case scenario because, you get some weird, we've seen it before in the city.
And I'll be your
things-
planner as long as I
Then it'll
can.
start all over.
So,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah.
I hope that's true.
So, but your point is well taken, because I don't think that last sentence is really clear. Because I don't want to be put in that position.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you got to plan for it all. So, okay, moving on.
So the next part of this proposal is to address some suggestions that came before council, a while back, earlier this year, related to how we calculate floor area. And in our community, we use a ceiling height of 12 feet, above which that floor area is counted twice. So one of the suggestions was to increase that ceiling height to allow for greater opportunity for, interior design of homes that won't necessarily impact the overall mass or bulk of the structures. Staff's proposal, and I'm going to walk here, I'm not going to talk because I need to talk into that. So this shows currently what, no, this is the proposal, I'm sorry. This is our current, one of our current depicts how we currently calculate floor area, which you'll see the central area has a higher ceiling height than the outer rooms, and so there's an area within that same room that gets counted twice. If you drop the ceiling, you wouldn't necessarily change the overall design of the house, so you're able to take advantage of the volumes in those designs. Another scenario. This is probably the more simplistic example of what we're proposing,
Like an attic.
to show that, again, you're not changing the overall design of the home, but you're taking advantage of the volume. We're proposing to up that ceiling height to 15. Again, to get it up there. Another aspect of this, again, to help kind of keep some control over design and use of spaces is to include in our definitions attic. And then through that, when are we going to count some of that attic space? So we're proposing to basically utilize, pull from the building code, that when you have a clearance in an attic area of 7 feet, which is the minimum required for a habitable room, and when you have that, you can also go down to 5 feet. So in those instances, those spaces would be counted towards your overall floor area. And I think this is what shows what that whole proposal might look like in a home. You can got like a vaulted ceiling you can take advantage of, where or above that, you know, the 15-foot height, and then this attic area, you can see where there's a 7-foot height and 5. Although, you know, on the other side, you still might go down to a 5-foot clearance, but it's an angled, so it's not a floor, so you're not going to use that. So we might have to kind of tweak some of the language to make sure that that's understood. But in looking at other communities, you know, we have kind of the lowest ceiling height.
Yeah.
Los Gatos, Saratoga, other communities, some don't even have a ceiling height. So again,
What's the big worry? I mean, someone's going to throw another floor in there and create another
well,
story.
and I think
Yeah, so that's why the building code is the way it is. That's why 7 feet is the minimum. That's why 15 feet is, can I use your thing and I'll just explain it to you guys? But, where's the one this one? So the whole reason I think, in my interpretation of how the building code is written, is they want to make it so if 7 feet is the minimum for habitable space, you can't physically put a floor in between and story in that space. So 15 feet is really what it should be. And I think we should reference back to the building code in case the building code changes.
So in this scenario here, so that living area is counted twice because a portion of the ceiling is above 15, correct?
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So what if you move the ceiling down to 15 feet and the attic space above it is, couldn't that,
If it's over
7 feet
feet
or higher?
Yeah.
you could actually,
I take it you guys are all building professionals back here.
I see
So
how
you'll
I
be
could
hearing the same kind of
play with that
presentation.
and move the
Yeah.
ceiling to
Yeah.
15 and then only take the hit on the attic space that has 5 feet or more clearance. So, and then come back
I
and
agree
raise
with
it
that.
up. So it's like,
Yeah.
But so what you said, Heather, was that at 15 feet you could
Well, no,
subdivide it. You could put another
15
floor in.
feet, it's kind of physically impossible to get the right living space because you're going to have at least 12 inches of floor space and ceiling
So you think
joists.
15
15
feet is safe?
feet is the safe
That's
answer.
that's a safe answer.
And 15 feet is consistent with a lot of other cities. These guys are all like, yeah.
yeah.
You don't balloon frame walls around that or anything, you don't have to do anything. Doesn't have any structural impact on.
So that's my
Okay.
best presentation as a planner of architectural type stuff.
So back to attic, though, I think we need to further delve into the attic part. So currently, our attic, we count.
We don't, well,
What if you have a super high-pitched
So-
roof and you have a huge attic, which
so
20-foot roof plate
we
Yeah.
don't,
for single story, so if you had a 15-foot ceiling.
So right,
We're hearing you, yeah.
Can we hear from
so
these
right
guys?
now, our,
Yeah, so no.
so right now our code, you know, if you look at some of our summary sheets, unfortunately, there's some language that would maybe cause us to count most of that area. It has not been used. It's not codified. So what we're trying to do is codify something that's more reasonable. You know, your choices are, who cares if there's no floor? You know, there are other communities that they define what a floor is. If you literally don't lay a floor down,
Yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah.
We kind of have a policy of no stairs leading up to it. If you need to access that for mechanical or whatever, it's a pull-down stair.
Yeah.
We all know how that works out, don't we?
So, I mean, there's a lot of these. You know, we have, again, you have plate heights, you have overall building heights of 30 feet. Again, it's.
Yeah, the 30 feet on a big house kind of limits what you can do.
And I don't know how, I mean, this is probably at least the first step. And then, you know, to the extent that there's other issues identified that have been, I'm not aware of a lot of issues where people have been utilizing that unfinished attic space.
And the space is there anyway, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who cares?
How about we let these guys speak? We have some cards here, and then we can discuss it further after we hear from. You guys have waited so patiently through all this stuff. So I'd like to invite Jacqueline Greenmeyer to come up and speak on this.
Hi there, Commissioners. My name is Jacqueline Greenmeyer. I work for Gary Colsat. You may have recognized me. I've been with Gary for quite a while, and unfortunately he couldn't make it tonight. I have a few diagrams, and unfortunately I have to apologize. I do not have transparencies. I was thinking just a paper would be fine. But I do have lots of copies, so I would be happy to pass them.
Yes.
Yeah. This is specifically. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've already
I've seen it.
So just to start off, just to give you a little background, we've been obviously working with the town for quite a while, and we work with a lot of prospective buyers that are looking, and they haven't decided on a property yet. And when they find a property in Monte Sereno, and they talk about having tall ceilings and vaulted spaces, we have to warn them. We have to give them a lot of, you're going to have to sacrifice some floor area for that here, but you're not going to necessarily have to do that in neighboring Los Gatos or Saratoga or Los Altos Hills or any of these other similar neighborhoods. So we would say, as Jeannie pointed out, Saratoga has a 15-foot rule. That's what we're talking about doing, double counting at 15 feet. Los Gatos has no rule on double counting at all. And then Los Altos Hills double counts at 17 feet. So there's a little bit of variation for you. The first slide shows exactly what Heather was talking about. We have the intention of the California Building Code when you have habitable space of 7 feet minimum, which obviously nobody really builds to 7 feet minimum, but you have a 7-foot minimum, you have about a foot of floor framing, and you have another 7-foot minimum, you have 15 feet. That's as little space as you can get to get 2 floors, which is obviously more than 12 feet. The second 2 diagrams are about typical situations that we run into every day. We are designing a family room, which is 18 feet wide. They want a nice tall plate, 12 feet tall. And then they're like, well, we're going to obviously put a pitched roof on there very often. And they're like, well, can we vault that space? Can we put a truss in there? And we're like, well, if you want to vault that space, you're going to have to double count the whole space. And they just look at us like, are you kidding me? So we run into this all the time. So the second example is of a even more typical example of any kind of room. It has a 10-foot wall plate, which is sort of the minimum standard wall plate height of every new home we do. And the 10-foot plate, and then if you want to vault that space again, very often you're going to have to, any kind of vault with even a minimum 4 and 12, 5 and 12 pitch, you're going to have to end up counting a lot of that square footage twice. And again, in both of these examples, the outside building envelope is identical. Nothing's changed. Nothing's going to get, there's no addition to the bulk and mass. And then lastly, I just briefly mention about the attic rule and adding some clarification with the definitions. So the existing language says a space with a roof and 2 vertical projections, aka 2 walls. It's not entirely clear what that means. And since there's no defined specific, a definition, in the past, and like I said, we've worked in the city for a long time. In the past, there have been planning members that have told us if we put a gable on 2 sides and put a roof across the top, even if it's a flat ceiling underneath, because there's 2 walls and a roof, we have to count the whole attic twice, regardless of how much space is in there. And we've been told that. So we've designed homes with nothing but hips, because we we can't do a gable roof in Monte Sereno. Maybe that's not how people are deciding to interpret the rule now. But again, having clarification now would be super beneficial for future planners and everybody at large to have some clarification. So, and then lastly, I just wanted to say that all of the suggestions that Jeannie has brought to you are not only will give clear definition, but they'll bring you in this neighborhood into match with the surrounding neighborhoods, and as well as the CBC, the California Building Code. And I just wanted to say thank you for looking at this, and thank you for your time.
Thanks for the
Can I ask you a
illustrations.
question before you sit down? So what do you propose? You agree with the attic, Jeannie's attic definition?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's exactly what the CBC says. The CBC
I
says
agree.
7 foot, and then as soon as you have 7 feet, then you go down to the 5 feet, and that portion continues to count. The building code further defines it as you have to have 50% of the space has to be over 7 feet in order to count it as habitable. So that's not part of the definition here, but it's very similar to Los Gatos' rule as well.
Then work
They
in
have the
Menlo
same
Park.
rule for attic counting. So,
Menlo Park's the worst.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Patrick Mockler.
Evening, Commissioners. Oops. Good evening. My name is Patrick Moakler, and I'm a homeowner here in Monte Sereno, and I thought it might be helpful for you to hear a perspective of a resident and, quite frankly, a customer who just recently went through the process. And I'm going to leave it to Jeannie and to Jackie and Heather and everyone else that has the architectural background, because I'm definitely not an architect. But from a layman's point of view, I think there's 2 real just common sense issues here that I think are important to address. And the first one, and again, this is as going through the process, spending a year trying to interpret this and what have you. The current code actually does the exact opposite of what it's intending to do. It actually, quite frankly, encourages people to have large attic spaces and then come back and sneak a second story later on. It just, quite frankly, it does that. And then the second one that I think is more, near and dear to me, I think that first one was more of a community responsibility, and as a community member, need to bring that up to you guys. But as the one that I think that might be the most important is, construction costs today are at world record levels. Land prices, world record levels. So, good design is mission critical, when designing homes here in Monte Sereno. And having high ceilings, helps capture that. And, when I look at the code, again, from a layman's standpoint, and we're not talking about changing anything about bulk and mass. The code allows you to build this box inside, your setbacks and everything that you have, and not being able to go higher than 12 feet to 15 feet, which I think, we could sit up here and argue and say, yeah, we want no limit like Los Gatos or whatnot. But I think, as you guys were pointing out earlier, when you start trying to think about all the what ifs, what could this cause downstream, and you start looking at it at all these different angles, the 15 feet is the magic number. That defends against all these other issues that may or may not happen downstream. So, there's a reason why Los Gatos and Saratoga and these neighboring towns have this higher limit, and they're not stripping value to the residents that are trying to, go and build, and also staying in conformity to the rules of bulk and mass and the setbacks that have been, developed and, conformed with over time. So that's the layman's view, and from going through the process and experiencing it. And thank you guys for your time and your consideration. And thank you for volunteering. I know this is a volunteer job. You guys are here. We got game 3 tonight, so I'm going to shut up and thank you guys.
Thanks for showing up, Patrick. Thank you.
And I just have one additional comment. I think one of the things that a lot of jurisdictions you'll start to see is us really moving to more objective standards and codifying these objective standards, because this is how we're going to have the ability to regulate, and really kind of taking that subjective nature out of it as much as practical. So this is one way to, keep that regulation there, but bringing it maybe more in line with the reality of today, and supporting good design into the future.
Well, I think that just the building code dictates that what we're doing is not a good idea currently, and 15 feet's the magic number, and I agree with everything that's being proposed.
What do you need from us?
Yeah, so what, at this point, I mean, everything is obvious, to me, sounds very rational. Mm-hmm. And we're not creating a precedent here that's going to.
And we're creating a good precedent,
well,
I think, because the volume's there anyway.
A situation that's going to, like, all of a sudden have giant,
yeah,
massive houses or whatever. I mean, it's I think this is all good practice here, what we're talking about, so.
So do we?
So what you would be doing would be making a motion on the proposals that are before you, as far as in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. So, within your motion, you might want to address, the general topic, the amendments to the subdivision ordinance, and then the amendments to the zoning regulations, either supported as proposed or as amended, or as modified by the commission. So it's really a motion on a recommendation to pass on to council.
I think we're talking about the floor space and attic area as is.
Yeah.
Without any modification.
And then the only modification for the hillside is just, and hillside and scenic corridor is just to expand on that line to make it more specific so that we don't have any issues in the future.
Does somebody want to make that motion?
You're really good at. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, so I propose that we approve the subdivision proposal as presented, with the one caveat that Jeannie clarify the language that talks about the remand of the application back to staff, that is presented in more specific language as to not have any future issues. And then I propose that we approve the floor area definition, attic definition. How do you want me to state what that is, actually? Can I just call it?
Say as proposed.
As proposed.
Or as presented by.
As presented by staff.
Mm-hmm.
A second.
Okay.
Well done,
I'm
Heather.
going to make you say it again.
I think we would vote on it, and at this point, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You guys have it, 4-0.
Thank you guys very much for coming.
Yeah,
Sorry to make
thanks
you
for
wait through
taking
all
the
of that.
time
for-
to do that, because that
Talk about
needed to
addicts.
be done.
The save button on Comcast is for.
Yes. Hoping my
Yeah.
family's
Thank
as,
Yeah.
as considerate as you are, yeah.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right, guys, have a good night.
See you guys soon.
You're an ice cream truck.
Oh, that guy is so annoying.
Don't get me running.
Honestly, is there an ice cream truck?
Oh yeah, he comes. He like.
Kidding me? We have an ice cream truck?
Wait, are we, I moved to adjourn.
No,
Oh, yeah. Do we have more?
we have item number 5 on
Oh,
the
sorry.
number.
Oh.
I was all excited about the ice
I
cream.
was moving to adjourn. I was gonna,
We
I
can
wanna
go
catch
stop
him. I'm
and
gonna
take a
catch
little
him.
break.
All right, what is, yeah, can you explain, Jeannie,
So
what
this
item
is,
5
this is me bringing something to you. Okay, so you see me here. So we do these minutes that tries to capture the gist of your guys' discussions or whatnot. There are some instances where, frankly, as a one-person show, it's not possible for me to get all of that. And I, with the recording of this, the real, regardless of your minutes, the public record is the recording. And, I have a desire
Not do
to go to really strictly action minutes. It really does free me up to listen more rather than take notes. I don't have a counterpart to tag team with. What I think is helpful is basically an action minute would be your agenda plus the motion. Who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and what the vote was. Some places just put the vote. But I think in this case it's easy enough to put what the motion was and then what the action was. So as staff, this is really me bringing it. There are times where I've had to spend, listening to the recording again just to get enough of what, and even at that, there are some that will come back and say that those weren't correct, even when you've adopted the minutes. So just to kind of...
So what is the purpose of the minutes? Is just for someone to go back and get the gist of the meeting, listen to the recording?
No, you need a written record of the motions that were made and approved.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that's the minimum.
And I'm completely and 100% in
Yeah.
agreement with Jeannie on this. I counsel a lot of nonprofits, and Mr. Johnson spoke for 15 minutes about
Yeah.
how he doesn't like trees, and he doesn't like these types of trees, and these
Yeah.
are the types of trees that he would like to see instead. All that is irrelevant.
Yeah.
What was, the proposal was made,
Yeah.
heard from the public, motion made,
Done.
passed or denied. And that should be and it should be one page. And bless you for trying to capture what our sentiments are in these things, but that is a completely discretionary act, and I think it's more often wrong than it's right, and it leads to so much interpretation and angst that it's just not worth it. And it's not, minutes are from the word minute,
Yeah.
which means
And we
it
always
should be a
have,
summary.
you always have the
Well, you always have the
audio
bias
record.
of whoever's writing
You
it
want
too.
to hear, yeah, and
You
it
just want
also,
the facts,
if
right?
you want to hear what people said, you have that
Yeah, listen to it.
opportunity. So
Yeah.
And we can make that available through a download and stuff like that. So again, it's,
no, I
I agree.
absolutely
I don't like
support
reading
you.
them, so yeah. I'm
Yeah,
totally-
exactly.
It's like, did I really say that?
Yeah, I don't enjoy that. We used to have someone on the council a long time ago, or the site and architect a long time ago, who was just Jim Barth. He loved to read them, and he just would go through and
Yeah.
every little grammatical spelling things that didn't matter. Yeah.
It's when somebody appeals approval of something, and that's the only reason why we make a record for it, because it establishes certain deadlines by which certain
Right.
conducts to occur.
Right.
And independent of that, how you felt about it, how I felt about it is irrelevant. It's
immaterial.
irrelevant.
Once the vote has,
Yeah,
has
exactly.
been
Okay, I
counted.
think we're all in agreement.
Okay, we're in.
so would someone like to,
I move that we give Jeannie free reign on the meeting minute format in her efforts to streamline the process.
Is that sufficient for you, Jeannie?
Well, to go to strictly action minutes where I would include the motion, which commissioner made the motion, which commissioner seconded it,
And the words of the motion, right? If there's any.
yeah,
Being
because
attached to it.
that's kind of, I think that's relevant information.
Sure.
And then what the vote was, and if, like, I would say 401, Commissioner Lesniak absent.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's, so.
Now, if it's 3-2, do you have to say who was for and who was against?
Typically, I would, but I don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I don't think
You
you
don't have
do.
to.
I don't
in
think you
these,
do because
Unless
it
it's in a
opens up.
resolution, and you guys don't do resolutions.
The only thing I would recommend you
So,
list is abstentions.
I
'Cause
do
often due to
abstentions.
conflicts, yeah.
I do abstain.
Often
So
do
like if it's 4-0, if it were 3-0-1-1,
Yeah.
I'd say Lesniak absent, Wade abstained.
Yeah, I think it's better to not name the names on who votes for and against, just because we've seen it where you get lobbied by people, or you know what I mean. Like they're going to come back after the. People
I mean, it's in the
vote.
public record if they want to.
Yeah.
I know they can figure it out, but
They
let
can
them
find out.
dig for it.
Yeah.
You're mayor, and they come back and they say, you voted in 2017.
Oh, we've had people come back where one guy said we're so offensive. We've never been offensive to anybody. This guy came back and he's like, you guys were so offensive to my wife. And we're like, no, I mean, we've never been.
I always feel sorry for these poor people.
I know, exactly.
Anyway, okay, I'm seconding kind of what she said and
The action-oriented minutes.
Yeah.
supportive
Now
action.
that she's moving to the minutes, then she doesn't have to write all this down.
She stopped writing. She threw
Yeah.
a pencil.
I vote yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Vote
all,
yes.
I think we're all in
All yes.
favor. Yeah.
4-0 on that one.
And then I'd like to move to adjourn.
Okay.
At
This-
8:12.
I second.
Yay! Well,
Meeting
well
is
seconded.
adjourned.
Thank you.
And then there's all this
I know.
paperwork.